functioning. He had a definition for culture, which I like very much. He said, culture is a process which gives the people a general design for living and patterns for interpreting their reality. Culture is a process which gives the people a general design for living and patterning for interpreting their realities. And the model of culture guiding the research program reported in this text consists of 3 levels: cultural aspects, cultural factors, and cultural manifestations. And I like that so much, I'm going to read you those 3. And again, this is in the record. Y'all get the tapes and then go home and study like we're supposed to do. Cultural aspects. The cultural aspects are comprised of 1, ideology. So if your culture already got your ideology in it, then how then are you going to bring somebody else's ideology from outside and impose it upon it? Ethos, number 2, and worldview, number 3. Those are cultural aspects. Cultural factors. The cultural factors are comprised of ontology, cosmology, and axiology, talking about your educational system and your religious perspective. And cultural manifestation. The cultural manifestations are the overt expressions of a people's culture. It consists of behavior, values and attitudes, etc. The cultural manifestations may be authentic, adapted, adopted, or apparent. And then his last was cultural substance. Cultural substance is a term used to connote the aspect and factor levels of the cultural model. Its importance is that the cultural substance gives meaning to the overt manifestations of a people's culture, meaning the human conduct. And I'll do one more, his view on ideology and his view on power, and then I'm going to just talk about a few things and then bring this discussion to an end. His view on ideology is that ideology, according to Dr. Noble, is essentially a concept representing the instrument which provides a critique of reality. And that's very important. Ideology is essentially a concept representing the instrument which provides a critique of reality. It determines how a people should see their reality, and in so doing influences, possibly dictates the nature of a people's awareness or consciousness. Ideology serves as the map which clarifies and gives perspectives to problematic aspects of a people's social reality. And all of this, he said, is leading to the empowerment of that people. And so he says, power is the ability to define reality and have other people respond to your definition as if it were their own. Now that is very important. Power is the ability to define reality and have other people respond to your definition as if it were their own. Our problem is we are suffering from 2 conditions, he says very clearly. One is scientific colonialism. Scientific colonialism is a term utilized to connote that science as a process in human relations qualifies in its treatment of African and African American phenomena as a colonial exploitive system. Any system of relationships which are characterized by 1, removal of wealth, claim to the rights of access, and an external power base qualifies as a colonial relationship. When the scientific process satisfies these 3 conditions, it is scientific colonialism. And in our relationship to Western science and technology, it has been about these 3 things: the removal of wealth from our land, the claim to the right to access to our land and our bodies, as they've done for centuries, and an external power base that it emanates from. So when the scientific process satisfies these 3 conditions, it is scientific colonialism. Under the process of scientific colonialism, knowledge and information are rigidly controlled by the methodology or mechanism of destruction, distortion, fabrication, and suppression. And we know that's what we've been going to in our relationship with the white community, their technology, and their science. But Dr. Noble said that problem is this concept he called transubstantiation. Transubstantiation is a process whereby the cultural substance of one group of people is utilized to give meaning to the cultural manifestation of another group of people. Let me say that one again. Transubstantiation is a process whereby the cultural substance of one group of people, meaning white people view of reality and the practices they engage in to keep conscious of that view, then begin to give meaning to the cultural manifestations of African people. Meaning the crackers look at us and they tell us why we did what we did and why we do what we do and what that should mean to us. And then he says there's something called transubstantive error. That's when we accept the crackers' interpretation of our reality to be valid and begin to act on that as though it's real. And so he hits on something that Dr. Asa Hilliard said, and he's talking about unsophisticated falsification. This is a procedure where information and or ideas are destroyed and or suppressed and falsified in order to influence the process of knowing. It is the lowest level of scientific colonialism. Then the victimization orientation is another part of his analysis. The victim-oriented studies argue that black families would be just like white families if the experience of both were held constant. The logic in this regard was that even though both families lived in America, the black family was the victim of negative experiences in America. In short, crackers are saying if they didn't practice white supremacy and racism against us, we would be murderers, colonialists, thieves, and liars just like them. That we have no existence outside of them, that we have no substance except that what they have given. So that left alone, and if white people didn't bother us, that we would be just like white people. That all that hundreds of thousands to millions of years of experience that Africans had count for nothing. All of the institutions we designed, from the Congo to the Sudan to the Nile Valley to the Sahel through West Africa down into the South and Eastern Africa, all those institutions from Monomotapa to Zimbabwe to the Great Pyramids to the Congo hieroglyph to what we call the Bantu philosophical perspective, that those things meant nothing, had no impact on our psyche, had no impact on our behavior, that once he put his hands on us, we were totally neutralized, and then we were reprogrammed by him, and that reprogramming is the only validity that exists in terms of our behavior. The sad part about that whole view is that African American and African Caribbean and African from the different nations in Africa who talk about liberating our people come to us with that same view and that same perspective. And that's one of the main reasons why our liberation movements have failed. Yes, the white man have come at us. Yes, he's going to undermine. Yes, he's got sophisticated technology. But all of that depends on human betrayal. All of it depends on human betrayal. When we get to the bottom of what happened to Minister Collard, we're going to find out somebody betrayed him. Somebody betrayed him. Malcolm got betrayed that day. Elijah got betrayed when people divided him and Malcolm. Somebody must be in your midst that's willing to betray you, that hold views that is not consistent with the end being your liberation. And so we just need to begin to call the question very seriously. If we're going to have a liberation movement, then we need to develop an African ideological perspective for that movement. This is the last little piece of reading, but I just think it's important because I remember how white folks can take things African, make it so negative that we begin to use it as negative and then help him destroy the very thing that we need for our survival. A classic example is the word voodoo, the concept voodoo, and the institution of Buddhism. He made that negative, so we see it as negative. Today I was grading term papers, and a young lady did a term paper on voodoo. She never mentioned the word voodoo once. Her paper was all about white witchcraft. Absolutely no reference. I wrote on the paper as I failed her,